Hello, everyone. It's Peggy McCall, New York Times bestselling author. Welcome, welcome. I'm happy that you're here, that you've decided to be here with me today for this event. Whether you're watching this live or whether you are watching the recording, because we are recording this, please shut off all distractions. If you have a phone that's beside you, turn it off or put it on vibrate, and shut off your telephone and television and close down all other windows. What I'm going to ask you to do is really focus on this time that we're going to invest together, because I'm going to be talking about you. I'm going to be talking about what's possible for you, and I prepared a presentation for you. So I suggest you grab yourself a pen, get some paper, and get ready to take some notes and get ready to be inspired. I'm going to share with you stories and examples of what I've done to make my own book a New York Times bestseller and what others have done as well. And do you know what's really exciting about all of that is that you can do it too. So let's go over. I'm going to open up my presentation for you, and I'm going to walk you through a special presentation that is designed to share with you the ideas behind everything that I'm talking about right now. So let's go over to my presentation. So if you have a desire to be a New York Times bestselling author, regardless of whether you've already written the book, regardless of whether you've written a fiction book or a nonfiction book, regardless of where you live in the world, you're in the absolute right place. So I'm going to be giving you some examples of what others have done that have created phenomenal success with their books, and how, more importantly, how it positively impacted their results. Now, I'm also going to be sharing with you things that you should absolutely avoid. I'm going to guide you through things that are a total time waster and a money waster as well. I don't want you to have those experiences. My only desire is to have you create more success. So at the end of this webinar, I'm also going to have an invitation for you. If you're really serious, if you decide that being a New York Times bestselling author is something that you would love, well, I've got a great answer for you, because I'm launching something brand spanking new. If you're an author or thinking about being an author, getting your book on the New York Times bestseller list is what's considered in that industry, in the author industry, as the pinnacle of success. And not only in the author industry, but also in the business world. There have been so many people who were completely unknown who have built careers, phenomenal careers and empires, financial empires, from making their books New York Times bestsellers and from writing them in the first place. There are authors that have written their books who were completely unknown. No one in the world knew who they were, but they brought their books out there in the world and decided to put some muscle behind it, put some energy behind it, and make their books a bestseller. And you know what's exciting about all of that is anybody can do it. You can do it. So if there's some aspect of you that's been thinking, well, I can't do it, well, I'm going to invite you to just put that aside for now, for this call, and just entertain the idea and start to think about you as a New York Times bestselling author. When I launched my fourth book, a book called Your Destiny Switch, which was published by Hay House, which is the largest self-help publishing house in the world, I had every intention to make that book a New York Times bestseller. And my agent, Kathy Hemming, represented me as my literary agent. And she is a wonderful human being. She's been in the book industry for decades. She really knows her stuff. And prior to being my literary agent, I was her first client. She was the president of HarperCollins. And so I launched my book from the comfort of my home. I was a single mom at the time. And I launched my book using the power of the internet. And as a result, I made my book a New York Times bestseller. 1 week later, it was a Monday evening, or late afternoon, actually, I got a call from Kathy Hemming, my agent. And she said, Peg, I'm just calling to tell you that your book, Your Destiny Switch, has earned its way on the New York Times bestseller list. And that was a pivotal day for me. And here's why. And I'm going to give this as a guidance for you as well. I had already been imagining what that would be like, what that phone call would be like, what that day would be like, what that feeling would be like, having my book on the New York Times bestseller list. And so even though Kathy called me with very exciting news, and on the phone while I'm talking to her, I was in my kitchen and I was jumping up and down like somebody on a pogo stick. I remember having the thought, this doesn't really feel any different. And the reason why it didn't feel different is because I had already been imagining it. I had already been giving thanks for the experience in advance. And do you realize that that is one of the most powerful techniques for manifestation? This is something that you can do as well, is imagine, just step into your imagination and imagine you as a New York Times bestselling author, and then push aside anything else that doesn't feel right. I have discovered the reason why I was born, why I was put on this earth, is to help make a positive contribution in the lives of others. When I determined what my mission was, I had no idea how that was going to happen. And I didn't know in what way or what means that would happen. But here's what's exciting about really getting clear on why you're doing what you're doing, is because everything requisite for the fulfillment of you living that vision will be attracted to you. So if you're looking at my slides right now, you see a picture of a baby. That's not me. That's just a baby picture that I found online. As a matter of fact, I don't even have a baby picture of me. There weren't any baby pictures of me. The reason is my parents actually started to do videos with those little 8mm cameras. My dad got an 8mm camera just before I was born. And instead of snapping pictures, they started taking videos. So I have an old version of some videos of me as a baby. So that's all I have. But anyways, that's not my point. My point is I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you help others, whether you're writing a fiction book or a nonfiction book. And I really believe it's important. I believe it's important for you because I'm so emotionally connected to helping you, to helping other people reach their dreams. Because when you think about it, books are changing the world. Books are changing people's lives. I've had many books that have absolutely changed my lives. I read books every day. I'm working on my next book, and I'm working on books quite often. I now have 12 books. They've been translated into 37 languages. And as you know, I've made my book a New York Times bestseller. And what's really exciting about making your book and you becoming a New York Times bestseller, just think about this for a minute, is that when you achieve that particular accomplishment, when you become a New York Times bestselling author, this is a designation, an accomplishment, an achievement that you will own forever. And there's a song that Ella Fitzgerald wrote and Louis Armstrong sang together, and it was called You Can't Take That Away From Me. And that's something that they can never take that away from you. It's like if you were a gold medal winner in the Olympics and you won that medal in 1992, well, no one's ever going to take that medal away from you or that designation away from you. You're always going to be a gold medal winner or gold medalist. It's the same thing in the author world. Once you become a New York Times bestselling author, I want you to just imagine this. The next book that you release is going to have your name on it saying New York Times bestselling author. Doesn't that sound great? And then think about your business card, and on the bottom of your business card, right under your name, it'll say your name and then New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't you love that? And think about on your website, under your bio or description or a curriculum vitae, like something that's describing who you are about this person. You'll have on there New York Times bestselling author. And the truth is, and I suspect you already know this, the truth is that as soon as you release a book and you write a book, people assume you are a person of authority. But the epitome of authority is someone who has written a book and made it a New York Times bestseller. It is so exciting. Now, my background, the way I was raised and where I came from is not what a lot of people know or understand. If you're looking at the image on the screen right now, on the left-hand side of the image is the house that we grew up in. My mother, father, and there were 4 children, me, 2 brothers, and 1 sister. And it was a very tiny, tiny home. I believe it was about approximately 800 square feet in size. We had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. And all 6 of us and our dog lived in that home. And we could barely turn sideways to move. 2 bedrooms. There's 4 kids. All 4 of us kids slept in the same room. Now, the home that I live in now with my husband, I actually have 2 homes. The one that you're looking at the right, this is the dream home that we live in right now. And we're just about 6,500 square feet. So there's a big difference, but I'm not sharing you this video or this image to impress you. What I want to share with you and help you understand is it doesn't matter where you came from. You may be educated, you may not be educated. You may be formally educated, you might not be formally educated. I have nothing wrong and have great love for people that are formally educated. But I graduated high school, which was barely, if I showed you my report card, you wouldn't be impressed. That's for certain. Like, I barely squeaked by and managed to graduate from high school and then went straight to work. But I studied enough about a particular subject area that I really felt strongly that I had something of value to share with the world. What I did was I decided to focus on my wisdom and understanding of what I had achieved over many years of personal and passionate study. And from that, I decided I'm going to create a book and I'm going to bring it out there in the world. And I'm going to be one of the people in this world that are making a big difference in the world. So it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter even where you live, as you'll hear as I walk through. I want to debunk in this call, I'm going to debunk some myths that some people believe about the New York Times bestseller list and about achieving this, and share what I believe to be and know to be, because not only have I put my own book on the New York Times bestseller list, I've helped many authors put books on the New York Times bestseller list, and I've also put other books on the New York Times bestseller list. So I really do know what I'm talking about. So the first truth that I'm going to reveal to you, and this is a fun one, and I think it's something that many authors are going to be quite excited about, is that a self-published author can be a New York Times bestselling author. There are quite a few people in this world who self-publish their book and they don't think that they can be a New York Times bestselling author. And absolutely a self-published author can be or become a New York Times bestselling author. Now, I could go on and on and on all day long about stories of people that have done that. I'm an original self-published author. I self-published my first 3 books before I became a New York Times bestselling author and had a publisher pick up the rights to my book. Still Alice, if you're familiar with that book, was first self-published. She couldn't get anyone to publish that book, so she decided to take matters into her own hands and market that book herself. Not only did she make it a New York Times bestseller, but that book was made into a movie that was a big success. You see, we can't even put a cap on what's possible when you get into this wonderful realm of possibility with what can happen potentially with you and with your book. Another book that was self-published was a book called The Celestine Prophecy, that not only was self-published by James Redfield, became a #1 New York Times bestseller and stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 165 weeks. Like, is that not extraordinary? Of course it is. Of course it is. You see, so many people live in a space, not only as it relates to books, but they live in the space of impossibility. Well, I can't do that. Someone else did it, doesn't mean I can do it. Well, you can. Absolutely. Anyone can do this. And I'm here to help you with that. Truth number 2. And if you're not living in the United States, you're going to love this one. And if you are living in the United States, well, you're probably a little bit ahead of the game. But even if you're not, it's okay, because you don't have to live in the United States to be a New York Times bestselling author. I live in Canada. I do not live in the United States. I've never lived in the United States. I don't even have any plans to live in the United States. I have clients from all over the world, on all the continents in the world, from many different countries, from down under, from Europe, from Asia, from South America, from everywhere, all over the world, the Orient, and it doesn't matter where you live. But you do need to understand the whole mechanics of what's behind the New York Times bestseller list and how they're tracking book sales. Truth number 3 is buying your way to the top of the New York Times bestseller list is not the way I guide authors and never will, and it is very expensive. There are some organizations in the United States that apparently will allow you to invest $250,000, and I don't even think they guarantee that your book will get on the New York Times bestseller list. But if you pay them $250,000, which involves you buying a lot of your books, they'll help you get to the New York Times bestseller list. But I don't know about you, but I have a tremendous respect for money. And that just doesn't seem like a wise choice or a wise decision. And I'm not saying that people that make that decision aren't wise. I think they're making that decision because they're simply not aware. They're not aware that they can do it themselves. And they're not aware that they can do it for a whole lot less than that. Right? It's possible to do it for a whole lot less than that. Another truth, and I didn't put this in here, and we could spend all day long on this, but another truth is that when you do make your book a New York Times bestseller, the chances of you getting another publishing deal or a publishing deal go up significantly. Anyways, let's get back to this. Buying your way to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. I don't recommend it. If you got $250,000 and you want to stay in that place called ignorance, go for it. But if you don't, I'll tell you how to do it for a tiny fraction of that. Truth number 4, to get your book on the New York Times bestseller list, your book must be shipping in the United States. Pretty simple, right? So even if you're self-published, you can get a distributor. You can go through channels, and I've got those channels already. I know who they are. I know how to do this. And so as long as your book is shipping in the United States, even though you may be living somewhere else in the world, even though you may be doing marketing all over the world, as long as the book is shipping and you sell enough copies, more than other books that are selling in a certain week, and all books get shipped, or majority of the books, thousands of books get shipped to homes of residents in the United States, then you will legitimately, and I want to say that very carefully, legitimately earn your way onto the New York Times bestseller list. Truth number 5. New York Times buying agencies provide weekly reports of all books sold and shipped within the United States. So what does that mean? This is how the New York Times determines which books have actually earned their way onto the New York Times bestseller list. They're getting reports from a buying agency, and buying agencies change. So you have to know how to find out which buying agencies are the right agencies so that you can have your books sold through those. And it can be done when you know how. And I know how to do that. So buying agencies is really important, that the books that are sold are going through buying agencies. So let me give you an example of that. From time to time, I'll have an author call me and they'll say, could I sell my book from my own home, perhaps print thousands of copies, maybe even sell them to my own clients, or if I'm speaking at a conference where there will be thousands of people in the audience and I sell thousands of copies, could that count toward the New York Times bestseller list? And the answer is no, because you're not reporting to you're not a buying agency, you're not reporting to the New York Times. So you could have sold, like I've had some authors that have told me after the fact that they've sold thousands of copies in that manner through their own website, perhaps from their own inventory or at events or some other methodology, but not through buying agencies. And therefore, the book sales were not tracked and therefore not reported, and then therefore didn't count towards the New York Times bestseller list. So that's an important part. And I suspect by now, you're probably already starting to understand there is a lot to this, but when you know how, when you understand what's required, you can make it work for you, right? This is what's so exciting about this. Truth number 6, and this is probably one of my favorite of them all. The reason why this is my favorite, truth number 6, all of the marketing and promotional initiatives that you initiate can be done online, is that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter where you're doing your marketing from. When I first became an author, I was a single mother, and I was not married yet. And I did not want to be an author who was vacant from her son's life. My priority in my life is my family, always has been, always will be. And so, being a single mom, I take my responsibility. When I was a single mom, I'm married now, but when I was a single mom, I took that responsibility very seriously. My desire was to drive my son to school and pick him up from school, not have him take a bus and be gone from the house for 12 or 10 hours or some long period of time. I wanted to drop him off at school at 8:45, pick him up at 3:15 when he was finished. And I was able to do that and create wonderful, phenomenal author success from the comfort of my home. So whether you're a single mom, whether you're a married mom, whether you're not a mom at all, whether you're a dad, doesn't matter who you are, what's exciting about the opportunity, I suppose you're probably already getting excited about this right now, is that the marketing that you can launch following my proven method can be conducted from wherever you happen to be at the time, as long as and providing you have internet access. So exciting. Truth number 7, national media is not enough. There are some people that assume, and you know how dangerous assuming can be, there are some people that assume that if they get on national TV, like Good Morning America or some other kind of national television show in the United States, that that's going to be enough to catapult their book sales, to have waves of buyers buying their books, to make their book international bestsellers. I've had my authors go on Oprah's show when she had her show on the regular network before she started doing what she's doing now with Soulful Sunday. And that was considered the epitome of success for an author, is to get on Oprah. However, here's what many, and I've had a number of my author clients go on Oprah, a number of them. But here's the thing, unless Oprah had you on for her entire show, for the entire hour, and held your book up and said to the audience, you must buy this book, in her very persuasive style, the books or the authors that were on her show didn't experience the success that they had hoped for. I've had author clients go on big shows, big network shows, and their books did not go rising or scurrying up the top of the bestseller list. It's not that doing those things is not a valuable thing to do. It's helpful for sure. It can be helpful, but there's a way that you can craft a strategy, a marketing plan, by consolidating and directing and focusing your attention on a number of sources of launch, through your launch, national media being only one of them. And here's something that probably just seems like common sense to you, it certainly does to me, is that you want to be investing the majority of your time on the things that are producing the majority of your results. And you can quote me on that. And as much as I just said a minute ago, that's common sense, which I'm sure you would agree, right? That's common sense. A lot of people don't do it. Common sense is not that common. It really isn't that common. Some people have an assumption that if they just go and spend all kinds of money, perhaps on social media, that's going to do it for them. And all they end up with is a giant expense and a whole lot of wasted time. And that really concerns me when I see authors wasting time and wasting money. And it's something that I did in the very beginning. I really was ignorant when I first launched my first book. When I first wrote my first book, I was ignorant because I didn't know what to do and I wasn't getting results. It wasn't until I found someone, an author, who was already experiencing success, who could give me the guidance that was necessary that I could invest in, and then followed that guidance. It wasn't until after that that I started to experience phenomenal success. But what's exciting about all this is not only can you make your book a New York Times bestseller, but it can positively impact you in every other area of your life, just from how your kids look at you or your parents look at you or how it impacts your business. It's such an incredible, powerful credibility builder as well, because people are looking at you like you are the person of authority. Truth number 8, There is not a specific number of book sales that will guarantee your book will make the New York Times bestseller list. So some people will say, well, Peggy, if I sell 10,000 books, would that do it? I don't know. It depends. I would suggest you start there. Start as setting an objective to sell 10,000, but I would actually strongly suggest you set a bigger number than that. And the reason is when the New York Times starts to look at the reports that are coming in from their buying agencies, and they're looking at the books that are selling fiction, nonfiction, what's called trade paperback, which is softcover books, hardcover books in a number of different genres, they're looking at whose book sold the most. And depending on which genre you're in, whether you're in fiction or nonfiction, and whether you're in some version of those genres, and you have enough book sales, that will determine if your book actually makes it to the New York Times bestseller list. So the truth is, it isn't a specific number. You will not be guaranteed that you're going to get on the New York Times bestseller list if you sell 5,000 copies or 12,000 copies or 10,000 copies. And what happens also, and this I really want you to understand, I really want you to understand this. New York Times watches very carefully the book sales that are coming in. They're looking for people that are trying to manipulate the system. I don't teach people how to manipulate the system. That's not part of what I do. I personally don't believe that's authentic. Ultimately, what you want to do is get your books out there, lots of books out there, into the hands of readers. And why you want to do that is because you want to write a phenomenal book that people love and they tell their friends. So if you're manipulating the system by buying thousands of copies yourself, or getting 10 people to buy 1,000 copies yourself, and those books aren't in the hands of readers, meaning there's no more book sales after that first week of push or launch, New York Times is looking at that. They're looking to see if it just looks like there's all of a sudden some giant spike of sales that looks like a book that came out of nowhere. And I have seen situations where authors have attempted to manipulate the bestseller list, and they've attempted to buy their way on the list or get a bunch of people to buy a bunch of copies and not have legitimate or real sales. And then they, even though they may have sold enough copies, they declined. They didn't allow that book to go on the New York Times bestseller list. And then that person was ticked off. They spent a lot of money, right? So I teach a methodology that involves you marketing your books, not just once, but consistently, creating a solid following, a loyal fan base of people that not only like you and your books, but they're telling their friends about it as well, using powerful and effective persuasion techniques. This is incredibly valuable for you to create a sustained success. And that's what you want to create. You want to create a book that is long-lasting you, that's still selling years and years and years after you've released that book. We are looking at books right now, like we see books that we study. I have a book on my desk right here, right now, by Neville Goddard, who's no longer on this earthly plane. He has passed on from the physical presence, but his work remains. He's still here. I can still hear his voice. I actually have some audios of Neville Goddard so I can hear his voice. His book's made into audio. Same thing with Dr. Joseph Murphy, one of my favorite people, and he's gone from this earthly plane. Napoleon Hill wrote books, several books, brought them to the world, making a difference. Their books still sell millions of copies, millions of copies. I was reading about Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Do you realize that his first book that he produced was actually simply a transcription of a speech that he gave? It was a transcription of a speech that he gave. I didn't know that. Did you know that? And you realize that after that, he created a book that he decided would be a self-help mainstream book called Psycho-Cybernetics. Psycho-Cybernetics. You may have heard of that book. It was one of the very, very first self-help books that I ever read. And you realize that book has gone on to sell more than 30 million copies? 30 million copies. That's why I love working with authentic, honest people who recognize that there will be an investment of time and energy, perhaps some money too, in order to create success. You're not buying your way to the truth. Now, truth number 8 is it may take a little bit of luck, but this is what will get you there. That's action. You've got not just any action, you must know specifically exactly what to do. And there's different options for that as well in order to make your book a New York Times bestseller. But if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to make a decision, if you've written a good book or you're writing a good book or a great book and you would love to experience this and you're ready to invest in yourself, it's going to take some action. You'll experience this thing called luck. And you've probably heard luck is actually L-U-C-K, labor under certain knowledge, right? Following certain knowledge, following specific knowledge. That's what luck really is. Is there a such thing as luck? Is there? Do you think that there is? Well, my belief is that there may be, but I also believe that we create our own luck. We create our own luck. We are playing a very specific and significant role in what is showing up in our life. I know with absolute complete knowing that I would never have been a New York Times bestseller unless I took action, unless I first made the decision that this is what I was going to do, unless I wrote a great book. These things all had to be in place in order for me to get to where I go. Now, what's also really exciting, and I think you can probably wrap your arms around this, is that the formula to make your book a New York Times bestseller does have lots of flexibility. Lots of flexibility, meaning there's many different roads to get you there. And I'm going to be guiding you through, if you decide to work with me even further beyond here, but beyond this webinar, I can guide you through these many different methodologies. Because if you happen to be a shy person and you don't want to be somebody who's out on stage and banging your chest and being the super sales guy, there are other ways of doing it. If you are someone who, where I was when I first started this, a single person or a single mom who's working from home, and you'd like to simply create this outcome from doing it, following guidance and following the structure that I offer, and you'd like to do so from home, I can guide you on that. If you're someone that really wants to build and make a difference in this world, like build a platform, you're looking to create a strong presence in this world so that people know who you are, where your name is like a household name, I can give you guidance on that. If you're someone who's already thinking about doing more than one book, or maybe you've already written more than one book and you would love to have more than one book, maybe you're even thinking of doing a series on bestseller list, I can give you the guidance on that. Or perhaps you're somebody who would like to have your book be a New York Times bestseller, achieve that accomplishment, and have your book, like James Redfield did, stay on the New York Times bestseller list for multiple, even years. Or maybe you're somebody who would like to get to a point where your book reaches this wonderful thing called the tipping point, where you sell millions and millions and millions of copies. So the truth is, I can guide you, and I will guide you through all of those ways if we do work together. When I decided to be a New York Times bestseller, I saw that end result in advance. And I mentioned that earlier in our call here together. So this is something that I recommend for anyone who's already set the intention that they are a New York Times bestseller. So how you do that is by tapping into your imagination. So you can just close your eyes. You don't even have to close your eyes. You can do this with your eyes open. You imagine seeing the New York Times bestseller list, or you imagine going online and you see the New York Times bestseller list and you see your name and your book there. Perhaps you even see emails coming in from people that you love and respect. And those emails are saying, congratulations, way to go. Couldn't happen to a better person. Maybe you're seeing your business card, on the bottom of your business card, you're seeing those words, New York Times bestselling author. Or perhaps you're seeing the cover of your book with the next edition being released. And on that cover, it says New York Times bestseller. Or your next book that you release, on the bottom of that book, it says your name and then New York Times bestselling author. This is exactly what I did before I created a New York Times bestseller for my book, Your Destiny Switch. I saw that end result in advance. I took a print out of my cover. I put a New York Times bestseller emblem sticker right on it, and I made multiple color copies. I had one framed and I put it on my desk in my office. I had another one put on the bathroom mirror, taped up to the bathroom mirror. I put another one right beside my bed so I'd see it at night before I went to bed. Put another one on my refrigerator. Put another one in my family room beside where I sat. And I would see it every single day. Every single day I see my book cover, New York Times bestseller, New York Times bestseller. Now, I suspect if people came to visit and they saw that, they'd pick it up and go, whoa, you're a New York Times bestselling author? And I'd probably tell them what I was doing. Yeah, hey, it's a vision. I'm creating the end result in advance. End result in advance. Athletes do this. Gold medalists do this. Successful people do this. You see the end result in advance and you become emotionally attached to it, meaning you feel it. You really feel it as if it's already there, as if you are already a New York Times bestseller. It's a very fun thing to do and a very powerful thing to do. This is how you manifest anything. I've used the same technique when I met my husband, Denis. I remember taking a photo of Denis and I and writing an affirmation beside the photo saying, I am so happy and grateful to be happily married to my wonderful husband, Denis, and he is happily married to me. We have a beautiful, loving, committed, respectful, honest, fun relationship, romantic relationship. And I wrote that out and I printed it and I had it in my office. Denis didn't even see it. We were dating at the time. Now we're married. We've been together 12 and a half years. We're celebrating our 10th year of marriage. And I am happily married to my husband. See, this philosophy, this idea works for anything. I've done it with homes down south, with business. I've done it with bank statements. You see the end result in advance. It's a philosophy of success, and it works beautifully. And I incorporate that into everything that I do with my clients because it's such a powerful part of the achievement of success. But you've got to decide. Now, I suspect if you're here and you've been watching this and you're still here and you're watching this, you may have already made the decision that this is something that you would love to create in your life. We've got one chance in this lifetime. This is not a trial run. We don't get to come back and same person and figure it out better the next time with what we know. Now is the time. When I think about when I made my book a New York Times bestseller, of course it felt good inside. You can imagine that, right? Well, it was so rewarding and exciting for me to see the elation on the face of my son. And at the time, it was my boyfriend, Denis. He wasn't my husband yet. It was so exciting. So the man or the woman of decision cannot be stopped. The man of indecision cannot be started. It's like Don Shula says, it's the start that stops most people. But you have that ability to choose. Napoleon Hill said, take your own choice. You think about your own life where you've made a decision, and you may have even felt scared at the time. I've done that where I've made a decision, felt scared, felt insecure. Who would want to read my book? What do I have to say anyways? And who are you to think you're deserving of being a New York Times bestseller? Who are you not? Right? I can't even imagine what that person was like, me, back then. But now that I've achieved this success, and you know something that's really, really, really exciting about all of this? It's never for what you get. It's never, these goals are not for what you get. It's for who you become in the process. I was talking earlier today with one of my wonderful clients who I'm blessed to serve. And what he was saying is that he has an intention. He's working on his first book right now, has an intention to do several more, and has already made the decision that each one of them will be a New York Times bestseller. And I know this man will not be stopped. He will be achieving his goals. I see it and I hear it and I can see it in his face. I sense and feel his certainty. But that certainty that I'm talking about is not something that is only reserved for a select few. It's something that you can switch on within yourself. Every one of us has the ability to achieve great things, amazing things. The ability is within you. Maybe you already know that. Maybe there's some part of you as you're watching this, you've been thinking small and you're thinking, you know what, Peggy, you're right. It's my turn. It's my time to make this happen. And I would love to be the one that guides you. These are just some of the authors that I've helped make their books or been instrumental or influential in these books becoming New York Times bestsellers. Some of them were known before, some of them were not known. But I'll tell you something, every single one of the authors that I've worked with that have achieved bestseller status made a decision to do so. They made a decision to invest in themselves and they got on with the work. They learned what was required to do so and they executed. They took action and then earned the right to call themselves a New York Times bestseller. Here's another one of my clients, Nancy Tillman. I met her, she came through my program, made her book an Amazon bestseller, but I'll tell you, nothing like how her life took off now that she's had 5 of her books on the New York Times bestseller list. And Kathy Hemming, who's her agent, I introduced them. Kathy Hemming wrote me an email a short while ago to tell me that Nancy Tillman's first book, the one that I helped her make a bestseller, called On the Night You Were Born, a children's book that she wrote and illustrated, has now sold more than 5 million copies. 5 million copies. And let's just assume for a minute, because these books were picked up by a publisher and she received advances, 6 figures in advance, her first advance from a publisher before she was even a New York Times bestseller was $250,000. But just let's do some math here. Let's say she sold over 5 million copies of one of her books. Remember, I just said 5 of her books have been on the New York Times bestseller list. So if this book, only this book, sold 5 million copies, which it has, more than 5 million copies, and she earned $2 a book, she's already earned well over $10 million. Millions upon millions upon millions. Do you think for a moment that Nancy's life hasn't changed? Of course it has, in wonderful ways. And she is a lovely, lovely woman. I loved working with Nancy Tillman. She was an absolute treat. But we're here to talk about you. So I want you to tap into your imagination right now and get excited and think about what's possible for you. Just seeing your name, your book, even if you haven't written it yet, your book on the New York Times bestseller list, and imagine how that can positively impact you in your life, how you'll feel, just how you'll feel about yourself. Just think about the confidence level, how your confidence increases. It has certainly done that for me. I know it's done that for others. But then just imagine, what does it do to your bank account, right? What does it do to your career? Like when I think back, like I am quite certain people that knew me in high school, if they saw what I've done with my life right now, operating a business all over the world, generating millions of dollars in revenue, doing work that I love, happily married, every part of my life is wonderful now. Just, it can make such a difference in your life when you follow through. I will tell you that there's many things that I've done in my career that have helped me. But the thing that's helped me the most is taking action. Even when I didn't have the money and I invested in programs, even when I didn't even know how, I decided I'm going to find people who knew how and would blaze the trail for me. There are ways that you can get to success, to create success in your life, whatever that is for you, whatever success means for you, and I can help you get there. I wanted to invite you to this webinar to have you thinking about possibilities, to open up your consciousness, to just push back any idea that's been holding you back in the past, to just push them aside, any limiting beliefs, and to really step into what's possible for you, because it is possible for you. Are you getting that? Do you really understand that? And I can show you the way. As I said earlier, this is the reason I was put here on earth. Now, what I've created is something brand new. It's called High-End Bestsellers. And I decided to do it for those authors that are either thinking about writing a book or have already written a book who would love to become a New York Times bestseller. This is different from my regular bestseller program. That's an Amazon bestseller program. This is different. All we're focusing on in this program is you getting your book or books on the New York Times bestseller list. There's going to be an investment of time, there's going to be an investment of energy, and there will be an investment of money. But when you put in those investments and you follow through, you follow the guidance, you're going to be experiencing success. So if there's an inkling, something you feel attracted to, it's not for everybody. It's going to be limited enrollment. We're going to have 6 months together. It's going to be a while. We're going to be doing classes almost every week, but not every week. 3 classes a month. We're going to do some mastermind calls as well. And we're going to invest a couple days together here in beautiful Ottawa. You're going to be coming to my home as well, and I'm going to walk you through what's required. So if you feel inspired, you can get yourself registered. This is not for anyone. Now, here's who it's not for. If you're somebody who's looking for me to guarantee your results, not in the right place. It's not up to me. It is up to you. If it is to be, it's up to you, right? I know what I teach works. I know it because I've been doing it for years, a couple decades now. And so I have such complete confidence in it. You've got to invest in yourself. I'm going to guide you with the best of what I know right now. Proven techniques, proven strategies, marketing plans, methodologies that can help you create success. So it's not for the faint at heart. It's for those that are committed, those that are really would love to make a difference in their lives, difference in their business. And they're looking to do that right now. Now let's go back so I can see you. We're going to stop the screen share. Oops, there we go. There we are. Okay, we're back. Hi, guys. All right. So here's your destiny switch. I just want to stop for a moment. Your destiny switch. When this book was picked up by Hay House, and by the way, I've received 6 figures in advances from publishing houses to publish my book, and which is a wonderful thing, and I'm grateful for it all. And as I said, my book's in 37 languages and sold all over the world. So what I did was I put an emblem on the cover of my book before it became a New York Times bestseller. And if you can see that, it says New York Times bestseller. I actually had these little stickers made up. I had the stickers made up. And what I did was I put one on the cover of the book, as I mentioned earlier, before the book was even printed, before the book was even available for the general public. And what I did was I took color copies of the cover and I put one in a frame and I put it right here on my desk. And I looked at it every single day. And as I said, I put them all around. I created the vision in advance, long before I ever actually manifested. And not that long before, it was months in advance. I took about 5 or 6 months of execution to launch my bestseller campaign. And I didn't do this full time. This was something that I was doing part-time. Part-time. See, sometimes people think that they have to sacrifice every other part of their life, their family, their business, you know, everything that they were doing in order to make their book a New York Times bestseller. You do not. You do not have to sacrifice. When I worked on my own bestseller campaign for this book, Your Destiny Switch, what I would do is I'd work Monday through Friday. I would take weekends off and evenings off. And that's been a strategy or philosophy that I've incorporated in my life for many years now. So I wasn't working weekends and I wasn't working evenings. And the reason for that, as I said earlier, is that my family is my priority. So it was my decision to invest my quality time with them in the hours that they were available, evenings or weekends and weekends. And so I would work, I'd get up a little earlier and I would work on my bestseller campaign in the mornings. I would just spend about 2 hours, like Monday through Friday, and maybe get up at 5:30 instead of 6:30, get up at 5:30, work for a couple hours, and then I'd go on with the rest of my work, all the other things that I was doing. So it wasn't sacrificing anything in my life. And as a result, they put the effort into it, and it's like you're building upon something. I know the building that I'm sitting in here right now, our home, was built from first having a plan, from making a decision, from getting the right people in order and in place, and then execution, right? And once the execution came along, over a period of time, from starting with a foundation and building upon that foundation, building walls, and then adding windows, and then adding the outside structure, the brick and the stone, the home was completed. It's very similar. I'll walk you through and guide you through how do you build that foundation, and not just a foundation for you to create this book as a success, because the foundation that gets built is the foundation to build your career. It's the foundation to build your business. You see, that's what's really important here. It's just more than just the book. This is so much more than just a book or a bestseller or a New York Times bestseller. Now, the primary focus will absolutely be on you being a New York Times bestseller. But when you just think a little bit outside that box to what else is possible, you see, what people are completely oblivious to, they're blind to, is where the opportunities are. And do you know where those opportunities are? They're absolutely everywhere, everywhere. And people are just, they're blind to it because they don't open their ideas to possibilities or opportunities, so they don't see them. And of course, in order for us to see what's possible, we've got to take movement forward. We've got to take action forward. We do have to invest in ourselves. No one's going to just deliver it to your door. You've got to do something about it. And when you do something about it, you get to experience these great success, multiple books, New York Times bestseller. And you know, something that was really exciting, when I released my book, Your Destiny Switch, the week that book was released and it was out there in the world and it rose right up the charts on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. And all of my promotion was done from the comfort of my home right here in Ottawa. My book became number 2 in the world, right behind Harry Potter. Now that's a very recognized name. And you know what's really, really something that was phenomenal about that experience is that when you're promoting your book and your book's out there and you're getting these seeds planted everywhere with buyers, all these readers everywhere that are going to read your book and tell their friends about it and they love your book, what happens is, because your book has made these bestseller lists, mine got on the New York Times bestseller list, was on the Amazon bestseller list, number 2 in the world. Other people who are on those sites or in those places making decisions to buy other books, they see your book. And they weren't even there to buy your book. They were there to buy somebody else's book. And then they see your book. It's like, oh, what's that? And so the very fact that your book is on the bestseller list creates more buying, almost like another stampede. Think about it. There's millions and millions of people on Amazon.com every single day, and they continue to grow. There's trillions of dollars of information that's being sold online not every day, every year, trillions of dollars. So that means there's millions of dollars that are being conducted online. So when you start getting exposure, when you start rising up in visibility and in fame and in exposure, you're getting so much more visibility. You're getting so much more results from stuff you had no idea would even happen. And that is fun to experience that. So after Your Destiny Switch was released, I had an idea for another book. And so I put together a quick book proposal, and with my agent, Kathy Hemming, sent that book proposal off to Hay House, who had published my first book, or actually it was my 4th book because I self-published my first 3, but was the first publisher that I had. Hay House published my 4th book, and they said, heck yeah, we want to publish her next book. Look at her go. Look at her market. Publishers love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it when you get behind your books, when you start marketing your books, because they know that they're going to make money. And that's what publishers are in a business to do. They're in a business to publish books, sure, but they're in a business to make money, because if they weren't, they'd be out of business. And think about it, any business is in business to make money. And if they're not, they'd be out of business. Think about my client, Elle Newmark. She didn't make her book a New York Times bestseller, but she did get a publisher from making her book an Amazon bestseller, and got an advance from Simon & Schuster for $2.4 million. Like, wow. So when I released Your Destiny Switch and made it a big hit, #2 in the world, I was ready with another proposal that was put in front of Hay House. And when they saw that proposal, it was for this book called 21 Distinctions of Wealth. And bammo, like that, they bought the rights to this book too. It was easy. My agent, Kathy Hemming, was kind of blown away, because she used to be on the other side of the publishing world. She was a publisher. So now she's a literary agent. She's selling to publishers. And I remember her telling me one time, she goes, well, you know, Peg, the way that it works in the literary world is that literary agents usually, you know, once they've got a proposal that the authors put together, they go around and they shop that to publishing houses. And then, you know, sometimes they'll get interest, and then they'll have to do a negotiation. They'll have to go in and see if they can, you know, convince these publishers to publish the book. And that's usually the way it works. And I said, no, no, no. Hay House is going to publish my books. And well, yeah, Peg, I know that's what you want, but it's not the way it works. And it was like on and on and on. We're like a ping pong game going back and forth. And she's going, this is, you know, why it's not going to work. And I'm telling her it's going to work. And she's like, this is not the way it works in the business. And I tell her, well, this is my outcome. This is what I see. What happened? She presented the first book idea. They bought it like that. And then I presented a book proposal for 21 Distinctions of Wealth. They bought it like that. Paid a really nice, healthy advance. And then here's what's exciting. They published that book. It was released a short while after that. And look what goes on the bottom. New York Times, the best-selling author. Because now I am a New York Times best-selling author. That can go on everything that you produce from the time that you make your book a New York Times bestseller. It'll go on your next cover. Or if you happen to get the cover revised, you can put on it, New York Times bestseller. You'll see that. You'll see that on many books that end up getting re-released. And you know, another tremendous benefit in all of this is that once you learn how to do it with one book, in other words, once you learn how to make one book a New York Times bestseller, you can do it again and again and again. So think about what difference that could make in your life. It made a difference in Nancy Tillman's. It made a difference in Elle Newmark's. It made a difference in James Redfield's. It made a difference in the author for Still Alice. And it has certainly made a difference in mine and many of the authors that I've been blessed to work with. So if this is something you're feeling a little bit drawn to or compelled to, and you're ready to take some action, you might even be feeling a little fear, well, I'm ready to work with you. So check it out. High-end bestsellers. I love working with enthusiastic, excited, committed individuals. And if that's you, I would love to help you make your book a New York Times bestseller, and would love to have a presentation in the future where I'm talking about what you did, how you made a decision, how you followed through, and how you achieved success as well. All right, it has been my absolute pleasure to be here to serve you. Get on over to highendbestsellers.com. Check it out. I look forward to seeing you in my program. All right, have a wonderful day.